Whenever we write code, we look at it on the screen, we read it, and we understand it. What if we wanted to write code which could also understand other code? For this, we use something called reflection. Reflection is a .NET feature that allows for the inspection of objects, types, assemblies at runtime. It's a really powerful feature that allows you to interpret and understand code programmatically, and we're going to explore it in this video. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel because it helps me bring you lots more great .NET content. So let's get into reflection then. Let's look at an example in our trusty console application. So we've already kind of talked about reflection. We've kind of introduced it a little bit, but to emphasize it a little bit more, reflection is kind of like looking under the hood at the engine, how things are running without stopping the engine necessarily. So we're able to put a magnifying glass over the internal workings of .NET while .NET is running. It's quite powerful. And previously it was quite a bit of an overhead. In previous versions of .NET, like the .NET framework, it could introduce quite a lot of overhead because you've got to, like I say, look at these things as .NET is running. As .NET Core has evolved, reflection's become a lot more optimized, it's become a lot more performant. So it doesn't mean that there is no overhead, but it is now a lot easier to use reflection in a production environment without introducing too much of a performance hit. Now, the key classes we're concerned about when we're looking at reflection. Now, the main area of .NET that we're concerned about when we're talking about reflection is system.reflection. So I'm going to add that to my console app. So now we're set up to use reflection. And there are several different classes that we want to be concerned with when we want to use reflection. So one of those will be type. So you will have seen this quite a few times if you've looked for the name of a type or type.getType. Usually if you want to find out what the underlying type is of something, then effectively you're using reflection to get that. We've got method info as well, which will give us information and metadata about a method. We've also got constructor info as well, which is a similar thing for constructors. So reflection often gets looked at as quite a complicated aspect of .NET, and it can be, but actually if you're looking to do some simple staple aspects of just inspecting metadata, it can be quite straightforward. So what use cases do we have for reflection then? I work quite a lot in automation. And that involves using something called a plug-in pattern. So in software architecture, there's lots of different design patterns. One of those is a plug-in pattern. And that kind of pattern allows for a foreign application to interact with your application. And you don't necessarily have to know what is inside the plug-in application in advance. So obviously to be able to do that, we need to be able to inspect the foreign application and say, what functionality do you have for me? I'm looking for X, Y, or Z. Or whatever you have there, maybe there's a common method or function like run, which will run on the plugin regardless of its type. So this is what we call dynamic method invocation. This is where we want to invoke a method on a class from another assembly, or probably within our own assembly in this case, but we don't necessarily know what the type is. Using reflection, we can get the type as we go and then say for whatever type that is, I want you to call this method. And we'll pass in a string to say that that is the name of the method we want to target. So as an example, I created a class called myClass. And inside there, I've created a method called runMe. So in this situation, I wouldn't necessarily know what kind of class this is. I wouldn't know what type this is. So I wouldn't know that this is a type of my class. What I do know is that there's a method called runMe, because that will have been standardized in some way. So I'm saying for whatever class or whatever type I've got, I want to call the runMe method on that type. So back in the program.cs, what I'm first going to do is get an instance of that method for whatever class or type it is. So first of all, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to create an instance of my class. Again, I wouldn't necessarily know that that was there. I'm just putting that there so that I've got an instance of it. And then to get access to the runMe method inside that class, what I can do is create a new variable. I'm going to call it method, my class.get method, and it will expect a name for the method. So I'm going to say runMe. So my class.getType So that will give me the actual type of my class. I know that it's a type of my class. In fact, I'm going to change the name of this to make it a bit simpler. So I'm going to change the name of this to anonymous. And then I'm going to say here, anonymous.getType. So I don't want to call the instance my class when the type is my class as well, because that's going to get confusing. So anonymous.getType, and then chaining onto that type, I can say get method. And you can see there's lots of different properties here that use reflection to get metadata from the type once it's been resolved by get type. So get method, and then it will expect a name for the method. So I'll just say run me, because I know the name of the method. Now obviously we're trying to target something with a string value, so it could be null. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to access it, but I'm going to pop a question mark afterwards just to be absolutely sure that it's only going to run if it's not null. So then I can do a dot and then say invoke, and it will expect the instance that I want to invoke that on. So I'll pass in anonymous, and then if there are any parameters we can pass those in, but I don't actually need to pass any in, so I'm going to just pass null. Now if I look back in my class, what we're expecting is that this run me method will actually write something out to the console. So if reflection was successful, then we'll see that message logged out to the console. At the bottom here, I'm just going to put console.readline, just so that we keep the console app running at the end. So I'm going to put a breakpoint after method, and then we'll hit debug. So our console app is starting. We'll step over this bit here. So if I hover over this, we can see we do have an instance of that method, and I can see run me here. So it's looking like reflection is going to work. If we then invoke it, we have a look at the console, we can see reflection has been logged out to the console, which is what we expected. So quite a simple example where we've taken in a type of some kind. We don't necessarily have this line in the code we would use in production. We just receive a type. It could be an object. We then resolve its type, and we say, I know there's a method in that type, whatever it is, called runMe. And this is really powerful if you want to use plugins, especially for things like automation. If you've got a bunch of different plugins which do different things, but they share a common functionality with the runMe method or execute, something that kicks a process off, despite the types being different, reflection can be really powerful, because you can create a system where you have an engine that just does the doing, and then a bunch of other assemblies or types that can be passed in. The engine doesn't care necessarily about the functionality. It just says for whatever you pass in, hit that runMe method and things will happen. So let's look at another example. Let's look at an example of using reflection to read the contents of a class. So where I've got my class, at the moment we've got one method called runMe. I'm going to put in a few other methods. I'll just call this one example1. It doesn't necessarily have to do anything. And then I'll put another one in called example2. And again, that doesn't need to do anything. What we want to do is just list out the different methods that are present in that class. So back in program.cs, similar to what we did with getting an instance of the method, this time I'm going to get an instance of the type instead. So I'm going to say, create a new variable called anonymous type, and that will be equal to type of, and then we pass in the type, so it will be my class. So we're not actually creating an instance here. I might have misled things a little bit when I said instance earlier on, but actually for this, we're just getting the type itself. We're getting the metadata. If I then wanted to inspect the methods, I could create another variable called anonymous methods, and then say anonymous type dot get methods. And that should send back an array of method info. So that will give me that metadata as a collection that I can inspect and iterate over if I want to. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a for each and say var method in anonymous methods. And then I'm going to write out each of the methods' names. With method.name. So I've already got something called method up here. So I'm going to just remove this previous line so that it works. There we go. And so now what we should see, if I run this, I'm not going to debug it, I'll just run it, all the different methods that are in that class. Now you'll notice actually we've got some more methods than we thought we were going to have. We've got the 3 that we added, we've got run me, example1 and example2, but what we've also got is get type toString equals and get hashcode. And this is .NET methods. These are things that are automatically part of a class as part of .NET. So those will also be listed out as part of Reflection. We're not just listing out the things that we've added, we're listing out any metadata that .NET has also included. So this is quite useful for the previous example if you want to do some checks to make sure that the code you're looking to execute actually exists. So you could say if get methods has a run me method, then we'll call that method. Earlier on I said that I wasn't creating an instance of the type, but what if I wanted to create an instance? Well, that is actually super simple. If I wanted to create an instance of the type, so again, anonymous type is the name of the variable, I'll call it that, and this time I want to create an instance of it. So I can use the type class and then say get type. So the name will be the namespace that the class or the type is contained within, which is console app1. That's the name of the project that I've created. And then within that, there is a class called myClass. So you need to have the full name of the class, its address essentially. So here it's console app1.myClass. That is just referring to the metadata for that type. So to create an actual instance of that type that I can do things with, then I can create a variable called instance, and then I can use a static class called activator, and then that allows me to call create instance, and I can pass in that anonymous type above. Put the equals sign in there so I actually assign it, and then if I run this in debug, we should be able to see that an instance of my class is created using this method. So here we've got anonymous type and then instance, you can see my class. One of the things we can see in here is the static members, and actually testconst does exist inside my class. That is a static member because it's a constant. So using this stuff in the real world, there is definitely a place for it. I've used it many times for automation. But again, as I said at the beginning, just be aware that there can be some overhead. One security aspect that I'd also warn about is the fact that Reflection can expose private properties of a type. So just be really careful with that. An example of this would be where I could do get fields. So if I had a private field in here, if I made this a private string, I could still get access to this with Reflection. So I could say private field type of my class. So I've got a reference to that metadata, and then I can say get field, pass in the name, which was testconst. Then I can pass in binding flags. And binding flags are attributes around the field that I'm looking for. So I can say that it is actually non-public and it's also an instance. So you can kind of describe what you're expecting that to be when you're retrieving it. And then it's as simple as saying private field dot get value, and then you can pass in an instance of that class. So I could pass in anonymous at this point because I already have an instance of it, and then just assign that to a variable. And so if I debug this, you can see I've got access to that value even though it's in a private field. So you have to be really careful with security when it comes to Reflection. Just be aware that it is a pretty powerful tool and it can contravene a lot of the access modifiers that you've actually created in your .NET applications. I hope you found this really useful. It was a very simple introduction to Reflection. There's loads more to go through, and I'm very happy to make a more advanced video if it's something that people want to see. But in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again soon for some more .NET goodness. See ya.